This is so much fun. I love this. All right, so this is the Understanding of Man podcast, and I want to thank you guys so much for joining. Please continue to tune in, like, and share. You can follow us on all platforms at Elam B. King, all podcast platforms, and all social media platforms as well. We are having a pretty great time here, and I am in Detroit, Michigan, y'all. Let me tell you something. The amount of pollen that has been floating around in the air, I have never seen something like this before, right? So let me tell y'all something, and we're going to jump in for a second, but I had a chance to go do the Motown thing yesterday, right? Okay. So I really learned some things. You know, there's a lot. I don't want to make myself look bad and get my black card pulled, but there was like a couple of people that I didn't know that was Motown, that were our Motown.
Don't say Marvin Gaye. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Might be my biological father.
Which Marvin Gaye might, but that's real. But the museum was super cool. And it just maybe was 30, 45 minutes. And I don't do museums and tours or whatever too often, but I went on in there and it was dope. So I thank y'all for having just Motown. And I learned where Motown came from with the motor Motown, and it. I sound stupid right now to them.
They got cars down south, right?
I'm like years old knowing all about that. But okay, so we're gonna dive on it. Hey, listen, I don't feel bad that I didn't know that. Okay. Gosh. But anyway, thank you guys again so much for joining. Of course, this is part 2. So if you don't know part 1, you're going to have to go back and listen to it, as we were having a conversation about just men being faithful and some of the challenges that we go through in that space. And so I have an opportunity of having Marvin Cotton here. I also have Dr. Eddie Connor here. And so they're just coming off of just dropping knowledge earlier today for a couple of hours to people. And they had a chance to stop by the Understanding of Man podcast and just drop a little knowledge. And so we have Father's Day around the corner, and I want to talk about that really quickly because I got something to say about that. Okay, I got something to say. Listen, today is like the 9th or 10th. All right, and I have something to say because I feel some type of way. I have seen one Father's Day commercial.
Wow, I haven't seen one.
One.
And was it a father that put the commercial out?
There's that, right? So you're talking about, I feel some type of way about that, right? And so in my...
Well, I was thinking about starting a gift registry for fathers. I was going to put it out there on social media because I kind of had some things that I want.
It made me feel like something, you know what I'm saying? Like it just, before I go there, because that's just, I'm going to say real quickly, that's a gripe that I got. And it's almost as if, I did some stats last year. And do you know Father's Day is like holiday number 11? Yeah. We're behind Halloween, y'all.
Well, maybe for Halloween, if you dress up as fathers,
we could
just hijack Halloween.
I mean, it goes Christmas and Thanksgiving. They're like 1 and 2, right? Then you got Mother's Day. Okay, that's cool. Halloween's next. No, it goes Valentine's Day, then Halloween. And I think even St. Patrick's Day got us beat or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to talk about a little bit of that later on, but I want to say this, Dr. Connor, in your book, you're speaking about certain things in regard to the basics of men, right? And I want to say that part of the basics of me as a man is that what was taught to me is not sharing my feelings. Mm-hmm. What was taught to me is to don't cry. Yep. Don't act like a girl. If I share my emotions, I'm less than a man. Mm-hmm. If I'm not able to provide, I'm less than a man. And so we had the baby boomers who were absolutely amazing, who had that, to pass that on to us, right? And then we've kind of passed that on. But right about now, there's been a little shift that started to happen. And so I want to ask you regarding inside of your book and talking about being a faithful man. I know that there's a chapter that you spoke about, maybe some basics or whatever, but I need your help in understanding, some of the things that we were taught And how how do you speak towards us kind of transitioning out of some of those spaces, those traumas that we have of moving from what we were taught that this is what a man is, but we're now learning that might be a little bit different. What are your thoughts about that?
It's a great question, because you think about masculinity, it oftentimes is the prefix of what is pronounced as mask. And we mask ourselves behind our money, our Mercedes, phone book full of ladies, all of those things to try to puff up ourselves in our machismo, because masculinity becomes so performative. And as we're coming out of a pandemic, we're still in a mandemic. And I say that.
Oh, yeah. See, told y'all. Told y'all about them Dolomite drops. I'm sorry.
I say that because us as men, we're struggling. You talk about mental health, and that we're glad we're talking about that space, but you can't spell mental health without men heal. And you think about it, 84 men a week take their own life. 75% of all suicides are committed by men. Men, we are one of the ones who are least likely to go visit the doctor, much less ask for help, much less go to therapy. Right. And so when you think about being faithful, when you think about being committed, I think a faithful man is one who is emotionally intelligent. He's secure. He's a mature man. He's one who thinks intelligently, right, and not just acts impulsively.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's where we are.
I told y'all. He does the little Dolomite thing. I told y'all. And so I appreciate you sharing that and this machismo, but moving that ball forward. Sometimes inside of that, it's almost like machismo would be more of as if we're always supposed to know, as if we're always supposed to have the answers, right? But sometimes as men, as fathers, we don't know, right? And so I want to ask a question to Marvin Cotton regarding, just taking what Dr. Connor just said about, okay, you always do know as a father. That's what it's stated as men. We're just supposed to know and move the ball forward, right? But what about when we don't know?
Well, I grew up in a world where I was raised by a single mother. I didn't have a father, but the world was telling me that a man is supposed to do this. A father is supposed to be this. All of the shows that I watched on TV had a father in it. But I didn't have a father in the same house that I watched the shows on. Okay. So, that's a conflict in and of itself. And just because you see it on TV don't mean you know how to be a father. Okay. We know that's something that's passed down because bad fatherhood is passed down as well. Oh. Stop crying. Shut up. Don't ask no questions.
Come on.
Do what I say.
Not as I do.
Absolutely. So those things are passed down from mouth to ear. Right. From father to son. Right. From generation to generation. And, sometimes we don't know how to be a father. I learned how to be a father in reverse.
Talk about that real quick, okay?
I just did all the opposite things that my father, so if my father wasn't present, I made sure that I was. Okay. I spent 20 years in prison, but I stayed on the phone with my daughter every day. Okay. He didn't give me any jewels. He didn't teach me anything, so I over-taught my daughter, if that makes sense. Okay. So I just did everything in reverse. He showed no interest. I showed a lot of interest. Oh. So he taught me in reverse. He didn't know that he was teaching me. And fortunately, I was able to kind of take that. I was able to kind of learn in that way because all of us don't learn that way. Sometimes we do exactly what we see.
I was going to say, was there somebody that influenced you besides your father and you're doing the reverse? What you just said, this is what I'm going to do. Did somebody give you that idea? Because I see that very often, and I'm wondering, is it just instinctual? You just automatically say, I'm just going to do the opposite of what I didn't like.
Well, I learned that I was doing the opposite later. Okay. Now, I was doing the opposite without being conscious or aware of what I was doing. But in my reflection time and sitting back in prison and kind of going through my mind and going through my relationships, right. Forgiving, going through the process of forgiving my father, and going through the process of making sure that my daughter forgave me, even though I was operating with her differently than my father did with me. Okay. So I became aware of that much later, but I always operated differently than him.
Dr. Connor, with the conference that you have coming up, talk to us, or can you give us a little prelim or whatever, or what spaces inside of your conference might address or help men just establish maybe a bigger level of emotional intelligence, or kind of deal with the traumas that they dealt with? Are there any spaces that they can, if you had to speak to the audience and maybe some of the men that are out there and people just coming to the event, gathering information that can help them walk through these traumas? What are your thoughts about that?
Without a doubt, we have space and place and time in the conference to talk about purpose, identity, and relationships. And when you think even about a man's identity, it is wrapped up in his father, whether he was there or not. You know, when a man is looking at it in the mirror, he's really looking at the reflection of, especially if his father's standing there, what he will become. But oftentimes we don't get a picture of our future simply because our future is bleak and is not there in front of us. And so for me, even I had to forgive a father who never gave me an apology, not ever coming to visit me one day in the hospital, you know, vexed with cancer. And so I think for us to really walk in the power of our identity, specifically speaking with the Access Identity Conference, we have to target, we have to look at all the things that we have to mitigate and deal with if we're actually going to walk into our future. We got to heal from the pain of the past. And so we have to address it, we have to identify it if we're going to step into our identity.
Dr. Eddie Connor, he just really pointed out a key that people can use. If you can't forgive someone that's not cooperating with you in that process, you're not going to grow. Because he said his father never visited him in the hospital, while, according to the doctors, you were dying in the hospital. Well, I was sentenced to a life sentence in prison. I was dying in prison, and my father didn't come visit me. Now, although he had never been around, you know, he was abusive to my mother. He was not a good person or a good father in my life. I still had to forgive him. So that's a key to breaking the gravitational pull that's pulling you in the opposite direction. If you can't forgive or go through that process without someone cooperating with you in that process, you're stunting your own growth.
And that is I know this time of year, that is something that's a sore spot. I wonder if that has anything to do with the reflection of how fathers are represented in the media. Right. You know, in the beginning of our conversation, I started off talking about, you know, that I've only seen one commercial. Right. So what type of message sometimes does that send? Right. That, you know, do we matter?
Well, it depends on how much credence we put into what the media say. You know, we're fathers whether we get the press or not. You know, we're fathers. Our fatherhood is expressed in the way that our children operate in the community, whether we get a commercial or not. So, you know, but in today's society, we do care about those things. You know, mothers are they get a lot of press, and that's beautiful. Mothers deserve a lot of press. But we can't be the opposite end of that spectrum at the same time. But the whole goal of being a good father, the job of being a good father is to put yourself out of business. Put yourself out of business, because
you're the executive producer. You were in the background, okay? The actors in the front, you know, the kids. You have some executive producer in the background, and the only reason why did I say that, and I say that in candor, is because I want to make sure that men understand that fathers do matter, and regardless of what the media has to say. And yes, there's a transition that some of us are doing and walking into a better fatherhood and walking into a better understanding. Listen, there's no manual about this thing. And there have been times I can just say as a father where I did not have the answer. And there is a journey that you go through in that space because you're taught as a father that you're always supposed to have the answer. And then when you don't, like when my daughter wasn't eating, I was like, what is this? I have no idea. And that's when, fortunately, I had to turn to my spirituality, like, here, God, you got that one right there. I couldn't do that. And that was difficult as a man to release, to ask for help. I want to close up really quickly by just sharing and asking each one of you to share a space, because this is not something that men normally talk about them seeking help, right? I want you to share, Mr. Cotton, where in a space in your life where you had no idea and you asked for help?
Well, that's every day. Especially, with the woman in my life, I'm asking her to help me with something every day. I'm probably going to ask her to help me with something in a minute. But when I was in prison, my access was cut off to my daughter's life in a way that I needed to be there. I only had access to her ears, and my mother would bring her to come visit me as often as she could. Sometimes that was monthly, sometimes that was bi-monthly, and I've gone longer than that. Of course, not in my own control. So I would ask people outside of that environment to assist. Like, look, my daughter's birthday coming up. This is what I want to do for her. And with the woman that's in my life, my fiance, I would ask her advice because she has a great relationship with her father, always have. So I would ask from a daughter's perspective that had a great man in her life. Like, what do you think about this? How would this affect you if I came at it that way? And we would debate and sometimes disagree.
Okay.
But I would work all that out before I made the approach with my daughter.
Okay.
So I have no problem with seeking advice from credible sources.
Okay.
Before I deal with the person that is intended to outlive me. I'm investing in my child.
I like the way you put that.
Absolutely.
I like that.
I'm investing in my child. I'm investing into this. She's an adult now, and I'm still investing in her. I'm still waiting for her to retire me from, being an active, being so active in her life. That's our whole goal, is to make our children not need anything from us anymore, but maybe a little bit of counsel every now and then.
Right.
But I will go outside of my relationship with her so that I can bring to her the best aspects of being a father.
Dr. Connor, just in your manhood, right? There's been a space that maybe that you didn't know which way you were going to go, what you were going to do, whatever. Can you give us an example of just where you just reached out for help because you just didn't know?
Yeah. Throughout this journey, especially post-college, postgraduate level courses and teaching, it really just came upon a midnight clear for me to just hang out in spaces where I know I could find that type of help. So I would surround myself with people who knew more than me and who had been where I was trying to go. That would be a former principal of mine, Mr. Herb Ivory, who was one of the ones who came to visit me in the hospital during my high school years of battling cancer.
Right.
He's still been a formidable father figure in my life. Mr. Jay Melton, who's an incredible businessman, who's got great insight into the entrepreneurship world, but also the space and place of relationships and marriage, as he's been married going on 42 years this year. So in many cases, modeling myself after men who are committed to their commitment, who are a man of their word, who do lead and succeed and walk in a place of integrity, helps me to look at all the specific aspects and see the cataracts of my character.
Okay. Come on.
Where they're able to actually look into me and see in me what I may not necessarily see in myself.
He said cataracts of character. See what I'm saying? I told y'all. You see what I'm saying? Like I told y'all.
The blind spots.
That was nice. That was nice.
I'm going to use that one.
Yeah.
Man, I like that one.
It's part of being on the show, man. Elam B. King bring out the king in every man. So
that man said the cataracts of character. That one I am going to say on stage one day. I'm telling y'all right now. And I'm going to sound so intelligent. I'm looking forward to that one. But hey, gentlemen, thank you so much just for coming on board again. And of course, they're going to be back in the future. I'm gonna come back to Detroit or do something. When this pollen go away, I'm going to come back.
Are you sure?
We're going to do a live session.
Are you sure that's pollen? It might not even be pollen.
Man, it's been floating everywhere. It's crazy though, man. But you know what? It's been nice here. Not too hot, not too cold. I guess. Which I probably got about 2-3 more weeks of this warm weather. Then it's probably gonna go back cold.
You already know how it goes.
That's so crazy. It's already the middle of June, y'all. But
fall is here.
Before that's sad to even say. I don't know what's going on with this year. But we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for joining. And just really quickly, Dr. Eddie Connor, where can they find you? Tell them about the conference real quick.
Yeah.
your book, all that good stuff.
Thank you for the space and place to be able to share with you, Brother King, and of course, my brother from another mother, Brother Marvin, man. Revolution not only be televised, it'll be digitized. Go to accessidentity.org. I want you to register. I want you to be a part of this amazing conference that we have taking place in the city of Detroit. We've already got registrants from over 12 states and 4 countries. Something's going on, and you need to be a part of it. Accessidentity.org. If you want to increase in the areas of ideas, impact, and influence, then I need you to go right now, and I'm going to give you the steal of a deal. Put in the access code, ACCESS, at checkout, and you get $50 off. And, of course, go to the website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Audible, get my book, Who Can Find a Faithful Man. It's going to be empowering for you.
And let me tell you something specifically to my singles. This is the type of due diligence that we need to be doing prior to making commitment and getting married. And so from a personal development perspective, I'm asking all genders to come out. This is the type of information that will give you an opportunity of growing yourself. I remember somebody told me a long time ago that your bank account moves in the same direction as your personal development does. And so it's not only just your finances, your relationships move in the direction that your personal development does. So this is the conference to be at to begin to develop that. Don't give me the COVID thing. It's over. Like y'all at concerts and everything. So mask or not, come on out, right? Grow yourself, right? Mr. Cotton, can you just tell people who you are, where you're from, your book, all that good stuff as we close out?
Marvin Cotton Jr., you can find my book on Amazon. It is an Amazon bestseller. You can find it on Barnes & Noble. You can follow me on Facebook, Marvin Cotton Jr. You can follow me on Instagram, _real_FMC. FMC come from prison, free Marvin Cotton, so I just stuck with it, the real FMC.
Okay.
You can also follow my social media sites for my business, Better Not Broken. I'm not hard to find. Please check me out. Follow. I always have something coming down the pipeline, so check me out and see what I got going on.
Absolutely awesome. 2 amazing gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining as well. And so we're going to continue to, man, listen, we like a new edition. Like we just like come together. We like they go do their own albums.
New edition or gently used edition. We the gently used edition.
Mint condition.
Only in Detroit, y'all.
Ain't none of us Bobby Brown though. We still got. We still in shape.
Yeah, Bobby Brown. He out in the hallway.
I'm like the Ralph T. You know what I'm saying? That's me. You know that's. We got Biv right here. I don't know.
I got a contract I need you to sign for in a second.
That's Ricky Bell over there. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining the Understanding Man podcast. And so you can continue to like and share on all platforms at Elam B. King. And stay tuned. I don't even know who I'm going to have for my next guest, but it's going to be dope. But thank you guys again. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. Peace.